Get out. My stepmother screamed, your room's been rented out. I'd just returned from my scholarship abroad, only to find my childhood room occupied. Go sleep at the bus station. She laughed with her friends. 2 months later, they all showed up at my keynote speech and froze when they heard my new title. This is something I've carried for a while, but after today, I need to let it out. Maybe to get advice, maybe to help someone in a similar situation. I, 29 female, returned to Pittsburgh after 4 years abroad on a full-ride economics scholarship in the UK. My stepmother, Rosalind, 50s, screamed at me the moment I walked in the door, said my room was now rented out to someone else, and laughed with her friends, suggesting I go sleep at the bus station. My dad wasn't home. I had nowhere to go. 2 months later, I gave the keynote speech at a major conference, and they were in the audience. The moment they heard me introduced with my new title, their faces went pale. When I landed in Pittsburgh after years away, I had 2 heavy suitcases, my purse, and a cheap cotton blazer that didn't hold up well to Pennsylvania's late spring wind. I was exhausted, more emotionally than physically. I had completed a master's and PhD in 5 years, moved countries twice, and hadn't been home since the start of it. My father and I spoke now and then, usually short calls that started with "I'm proud of you" and ended with "Rosalind's just been busy with the girls." Rosalind was my stepmother. She moved in when I was 12, after my mother died suddenly. I didn't dislike her at first, I didn't feel anything at all. I'd gone emotionally numb for a long time after my mom passed, and by the time I started noticing things, I realized I wasn't wanted in my own house. My father was gentle, kind even, but tired. Always working, always avoiding conflict. He rarely saw how Rosalind would sigh every time I walked into the kitchen. Or how Cleo and Maribel, her daughters from her first marriage, ignored me, treating me like an afterthought. Still, I stayed quiet. I studied. I earned top grades, volunteered, and when I got the scholarship to Edinburgh for economics, I cried in the library. It felt like I'd found the door out. My dad was proud. Rosalind had said nothing but nodded slightly. Fast forward to last June. I had just flown back home after defending my thesis, graduating with distinction, and getting a few published articles under my belt. I didn't have a job lined up yet, but I was confident. The plan was to stay with my dad for a few months, help him out if needed, get on my feet. I hadn't expected a welcome party. But I didn't expect what I got either. When I knocked on the door, I could hear music playing. It was the same playlist Rosalind always put on when guests came over, soft jazz, the kind you'd hear in an elevator. She opened the door, eyes wide. For a moment, I thought she might hug me. Instead, she stepped back, holding the door half shut. "What are you doing here?" I blinked. "I just got back. I texted Dad last week. He said I could stay here until," her eyes narrowed. "Your room is Zara's now." "Who's Zara?" She laughed, actually laughed. Loud enough that the women sitting in the living room, her bridge club friends or wine night regulars, I wasn't sure, turned to look. "She rents the room," Rosalind said. $600 a month. You think we're just going to leave it empty for you to show up whenever? I thought I could stay here, just for a bit. Go sleep at the bus station, one of her friends snickered. Honestly, you're lucky we didn't get rid of your old books. They're still boxed in the garage. Take them and go wherever you're going. And just like that, the door was closed. No sign of my father. I stood outside, suitcases beside me, wondering if I should knock again. Call him. But I didn't. I think something in me knew, it wouldn't help. I found a motel that night. $78 a night, sheets smelled like cigarettes, and the ice machine didn't work. I stayed there 4 nights. I didn't sleep much. When I tried calling my dad, it went to voicemail. Eventually, I got a message, out of town helping Aunt Helen, sorry. Everything okay? I didn't know what to say. I started applying to jobs the next morning. I found a cafe near Carnegie Mellon that let me sit in the back with my laptop as long as I ordered a coffee every 2 hours. It became my base camp. I sent out resumes to nonprofits, think tanks, even banks, which I had sworn I'd never do. I ended up at a community co-working space one afternoon when I saw a notice, Tech Edge Women in Business Conference, speaker applications open. I clicked without thinking. I filled out the form. I attached my thesis on economic policy and financial exclusion. I didn't expect anything. But at that point, rejection felt like just another Tuesday. 2 weeks later, I got an email. We're thrilled to invite Dr. Sienna Ramirez as a keynote speaker at this year's conference. My throat closed up. Dr. Ramirez. That was me. That was my name, my full name. No Cleo. No Maribel. No Rosalind. Me. I worked day and night on my speech. I borrowed a suit from a friend who worked corporate. I practiced my talk in front of mirrors, cafe windows, and eventually a group of other speakers I'd met during prep sessions. The day of the conference, I stood backstage trembling. I could see the crowd through the side curtain. Hundreds of people. And then I saw them. Rosalind. Cleo. Maribel. Sitting near the center, just a few rows from the front. Cleo had her arms crossed. Maribel was scrolling her phone. Rosalind wore a pearl necklace I hadn't seen before. They didn't see me yet. Then the host walked up. Microphone in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker comes to us with a doctorate in economics, international recognition, and groundbreaking research in economic justice. Please welcome Dr. Sienna Ramirez. Their heads turned in unison. I walked out. I didn't stumble. I didn't flinch. I stood straight, looked out over the crowd, and began my talk on the systems that trap young people in generational poverty, and the family dynamics that too often go unspoken. I didn't name names. I didn't have to. I saw Rosalind's face change in the first minute. She turned red. Maribel stopped looking at her phone. Cleo looked like she'd swallowed ice. And still, I kept speaking. As I walked off the stage, the applause still echoing behind me, my legs felt like they had just carried someone else. Someone stronger. Someone who, only a few months ago, was sleeping in a motel bed with springs poking into her ribs, wondering how everything had gone so sideways. A volunteer handed me a small bottle of water and a thank you envelope. I nodded, I still scanning the crowd in the lobby beyond the stage area. They were there. Rosalind was speaking low and fast to Cleo. Maribel stood slightly behind them, arms folded, visibly agitated. They were all looking around like they'd lost something, or someone. Maybe they were looking for me. Maybe they hadn't believed it was really me until the end. I slipped past them without a word. I didn't feel like being stopped. I wasn't angry in that moment. Not really. I was tired. More than anything, I was just done. That evening, I got an email from a woman named Melissa Nguyen, an executive director at a major economic development nonprofit. She had been in the audience and wanted to talk about a potential consulting role. She wasn't the only one. Over the next week, 3 other invitations came in, 2 for guest lectures, and 1 for a grant-backed policy development role. All from one speech. I wanted to call someone. To tell someone what was happening. But I couldn't bring myself to reach out to my dad. I hadn't heard from him since that short voicemail. Not a call. Not a text. Not even a forwarded email. I stayed in Pittsburgh, but not for family. The city had always been home to me in some strange, stubborn way. I found a month-to-month rental on the edge of Shadyside, above a bakery, with windows that let in more morning light than I needed. I furnished it with second-hand furniture and whatever was left from my savings. I was still frugal. Habits from surviving don't die easy. About 10 days after the conference, I got a voicemail. It was my father. He sounded older. Hoarse. Like the words were struggling to climb their way out of him. I saw the live stream. You were brilliant. I didn't know. I wish I had. I wish I'd protected you more. Call me if you can. Or don't. I understand. I listened to it twice. I didn't call back. A few days later, I ran into Zara, the woman who had moved into my old room. She was standing in line at the grocery store near my apartment. I recognized her immediately. She had been wearing my old high school hoodie when Rosalind slammed the door in my face. She was holding almond milk and a bag of lentils. I debated whether to approach her. She turned slightly, caught me staring, and tilted her head. Are you Sienna? I nodded, surprised. Oh my God, she said, stepping closer. I'm so sorry about what happened that night. I didn't say anything. I just let her speak. I had no idea you were coming back. Rosalind said you'd cut ties with the family. She made it sound like you abandoned them, and your dad was too sick to keep up with the house. My stomach clenched. Sick? What do you mean? She frowned. He was in and out of the hospital last year. Some sort of kidney thing. That's what she told me, at least. She was always vague. Honestly, I didn't stay long. You didn't? No, she said, rolling her eyes. She was a nightmare. Passive-aggressive, nosy, and weirdly territorial. I moved out about a month ago. That meant she had already left before the conference. Yet Rosalind hadn't mentioned it. Of course she hadn't. Your dad used to ask about you, Zara added. Quietly. I think he missed you. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say that missing someone isn't the same as showing up for them. But I also wanted to ask how bad it had really gotten. Instead, I paid for my groceries and left. Another week passed. Then a letter arrived. A real one. Handwritten. The envelope was smudged like someone had held it too long before deciding to send it. It was from my father. Sienna, if you're reading this, it means I finally worked up the courage to say the things I've left unsaid for too long. I should never have let her speak to you the way she did. I should have stopped her that night. I didn't know she would kick you out. I was with Helen in Akron, trying to recover from my last treatment. I let my fear and my pride get in the way. She convinced me you didn't want this family anymore. And I believed it because it hurt less than admitting I failed you. But I watched you at the conference. My daughter. You stood there in front of hundreds of strangers and made them feel something. You were always meant for more than we could see. I don't expect forgiveness. But I'm still here. And if you have space, one day, I'd like to be in your life again. Even if just on the edges. Love, Dad. It sat on my kitchen table for hours. I read it again. And again. And still, I didn't know what to do. I carried it around in my bag for days. And then I got a phone call from Aunt Helen. She told me the truth. My father had been in and out of dialysis for the better part of the year. Rosalind had power of attorney. She was managing the household, if you could call it that. She made decisions without telling him, including renting out my room and cutting off communication with me. He had asked for me more than once, Helen said. But Rosalind would say I was busy, unreachable, too important now. He didn't have a phone of his own. Everything went through the house line, or through Rosalind. And now, he was moving into assisted care. Not because he wanted to. Because he had to. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, that letter still open beside my laptop. A job offer sat in my inbox, ready to be accepted. A plane ticket back to Scotland was half booked. But my fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't know where I was going next. But I knew I had to see him. It was raining the morning I decided to visit him. Not a drizzle, but that heavy, soaking kind of rain that feels like it's trying to stop you from whatever it is you're about to do. I sat on the edge of my bed, holding the umbrella in one hand and the letter in the other, debating whether to go. My mind kept cycling between anger and guilt like a washing machine that never finished its spin. I hadn't been to Greenvale assisted living before, but I knew the area, just outside Dormont, tucked into a hill overlooking the river. I'd passed it a dozen times growing up and never paid attention to the sign. Now it felt like the entrance to another world. Not a bad one, just one I didn't think I'd ever have to walk into this soon. The woman at the front desk was kind, her voice soft like she was used to dealing with people who were on the verge of breaking down. She didn't ask questions. She pointed down the hall and told me room 203. "He's up," she said. "Been watching the window like he knew someone was coming." That did something to me. Room 203 smelled like peppermint and paper. My father was sitting by the window in a padded chair with a blanket over his legs. He looked thinner, his shoulders smaller than I remembered. Not sickly, just worn down. Like time had taken more from him than it should have. When he saw me, he didn't jump up. He didn't cry. He just smiled, so quietly I almost missed it. "Sienna." It hit me harder than I expected, hearing my name like that. Not rushed, not whispered in guilt. Just said like he was glad to say it. "Hi, Dad." I didn't rush to hug him. I didn't know if I wanted to. Instead, I sat across from him in the second chair and looked at him for what felt like the first time in years. There was a long silence. He gestured toward a side table. "There's tea if you want. They make it terrible here, but they mean well." I poured myself a cup. The bitterness cut right through the tightness in my chest. "I got your letter," I said. He nodded slowly, eyes dropping to his hands. "I don't know what to say," I added. "You don't have to say anything." "But I did. Why didn't you call me yourself? Why didn't you have your own phone?" He hesitated. "I did, for a while. But Rosalind, she said I kept forgetting to charge it. Said it was better to go through the house line." I didn't think much of it at first, then, he stopped himself. I should have fought harder. I didn't speak. I wasn't sure I wanted apologies anymore. He sighed. "She told me you were too busy. That you'd outgrown us. She showed me pictures of you on stage, at fancy dinners. She made it sound like you'd left us behind, like you didn't care." "Did you believe her?" He looked out the window for a long time before answering. "I wanted to." The honesty stung more than a lie would have. "But when I saw you speak," he continued, "when I saw your name on that screen, heard your voice, I knew. You didn't leave us. We pushed you out." A nurse came in with a tray and set it gently on the side table, fruit, some toast, and a vitamin cup. She gave me a small nod, clearly reading the tension in the air. After she left, he spoke again. "I signed the house over to her last year. I was going through treatment, and the bills were eating away everything. She said she'd take care of things. Why didn't you ask me?" I whispered. "I would have helped. I had grants, stipends, I could have sent money. I didn't want you to feel obligated. I thought I could protect you from how bad things got." I stared at him, the guilt threading into my spine like cold wire. "She didn't just take the house," I said. "She took you from me." He looked down. "I know." There was another long silence. Then I asked the question I had been avoiding, "Do you still talk to her?" His answer was instant. "No. She left." "Left?" "After the conference. She packed a few things, took the girls, and left me a note. Said she couldn't deal with the stress. Said she was tired of being the bad guy." He chuckled, the sound dry and bitter. "She was always tired," he added. "Tired when your mom died. Tired when you graduated high school. Tired when I got sick. But she never lifted a damn finger to help when it really mattered." I felt something ease inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet. But understanding. For the first time, my father wasn't hiding behind passivity or pretending it had all been fine. She left Cleo and Maribel with an aunt in Ohio. I haven't heard from them since. And honestly, I don't know if I want to. I saw them at the conference, I said. He raised his eyebrows. They looked shocked, I added, not hiding the edge in my voice. He smiled faintly. Good. That surprised me. It was the first time I'd heard any bitterness from him. Maybe he was done playing peacekeeper. Maybe he realized too late that neutrality can be its own form of betrayal. I'm proud of you, he said, suddenly. More than I've ever been proud of anyone. Not just for the degree, or the speech. For surviving us. For becoming someone in spite of everything. I swallowed the lump in my throat and looked out the window. It had stopped raining. My father and I started meeting every Sunday. Sometimes I'd bring a puzzle or a small cake. Sometimes we just sat by the window, letting silence mend what words had failed to over the years. There were still hard moments, and forgiveness wasn't instant. But I was no longer speaking to a man who hid behind silence. He owned his part in it. That counted for something. The biggest surprise came 3 weeks later. I received a letter from a lawyer, Rosalind's. Apparently, Rosalind hadn't just left the house. She'd tried to sell it. But here's where her greed got sloppy. My father had only signed over power of attorney temporarily, something she never finalized due to clerical delays, according to the legal documents. She tried to push through the sale using forged paperwork. The buyer noticed inconsistencies and flagged it. That triggered a review. The court sided with my father. She was forced to move out. The deed stayed with him. She hadn't realized the power of attorney had expired the moment he was declared mentally fit by his attending physician 6 months prior. That tiny detail undid her entire plan. Karma doesn't usually come with a court seal and stamped documents, but this time it did. A few weeks later, I returned to my childhood home, not to move in, but to see it one last time. I walked through the front door, keys jangling in my hand, and saw a house stripped of warmth. Cleo and Maribel's rooms were bare. My old bedroom was still painted in the seafoam green the first had picked when I was 13. The bed was gone, replaced by a sagging futon and a pile of Zara's forgotten hangers. I walked into the garage and found the boxes with my name scrawled across them in permanent marker. She hadn't even bothered to unpack my life. Just stashed it in the corner like clutter. I took my books, old journals, a photo of my mother from when I was 8. That was all I needed. And then I left. Now for the best part. The real revenge wasn't in reclaiming a house or watching Rosalind pack up her chaos and leave, it came later, in the most unexpected way. That fall, I accepted the consulting position with a Pittsburgh-based nonprofit that focused on economic outreach, education, and financial literacy for women in low-income communities. I helped them rework their entire grant strategy and create a mentorship network. Within 6 months, I was offered the director's seat. Guess who applied for a communications position in my department? Maribel. The resume was clean, likely scrubbed with the help of someone professional, but I recognized her email handle right away. I didn't say anything. I scheduled the interview like I would for anyone else. She showed up 10 minutes early, wearing a blazer and what I guessed was borrowed confidence. She didn't recognize my name at first. My full title on paper was Drive S. Ramirez, Director of Community Impact Initiatives. But when she walked into the interview room and saw me sitting there, she froze. I smiled. Maribel. She blinked. Dr. Ramirez? Her voice cracked on the word. Not out of fear, exactly, more like disbelief. I gestured to the seat across from me. You can sit. The interview lasted 13 minutes. I asked standard questions. She gave standard answers. But the weight in the room was immense. I didn't bring up the past. I didn't have to. She squirmed in it all on her own. At the end, I stood. Well, Maribel, thank you for your time. We'll be in touch after we finish the first round of interviews. She nodded, clearly shaken. When she reached the door, she paused. I didn't know, she said quietly. Back then. I didn't know it was going to be like that. I looked at her. Not cruelly. Just plainly. Yes, you did. Then I turned back to my notes. She never got a call back. A few months later, I received a thank you plaque from the City Council for my department's work in reducing household debt in underserved neighborhoods. I was invited to speak again, this time at a national symposium in D.C. Rosalind showed up at that one, too. I saw her from the podium. Front row. Wearing pearls again. Sitting next to a man who looked a little too polished, a little too tense. She didn't recognize me until my bio appeared on screen. I watched her face shift from passive interest to shocked recognition. I smiled through the rest of my speech. Afterward, I walked past her. She opened her mouth, maybe to say something. But I just gave a small nod and kept walking. Not out of malice. Out of indifference. She no longer had a role in the life I built. Today, I still live in Pittsburgh. My father moved into a smaller assisted living facility closer to me. We have dinner every Sunday. He tells the same stories sometimes. I let him. I think he needs to say them out loud. The house on Liberty Avenue was donated to a local women's shelter last year. My dad signed it over himself. Let it help someone, he said. Let it be a place where people get a second chance. We walked through the house together one last time. Empty. Clean. Quiet. Do you want to say goodbye to it? I asked. He shook his head. It was never really home after your mom. So no, I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I didn't need to. My revenge wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was walking onto stages she said I'd never reach. It was holding the pen when she tried to hold the power. It was looking them in the eye, not to shame them, but to show them I survived them. And more than that, I outgrew them.